And joining me now live from our Wellington studio is National Spokesperson for Infrastructure and Transport, Chris Bishop. Kia ora, Chris. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Kia ora, good to be here.
This is massive for both of your portfolios, huge projects, but a huge price tag similarly. How on earth are we going to afford all of this?
Well, look, it's an incredibly exciting day. Aucklanders have been waiting, decades for a program like this. It's a 20-year vision. I do want to stress that we've been asked to outline a pipeline of projects, and we've done exactly that. And yes, it is pricey, but we think it's worth it. And in terms of how we're paying for it, we're making quite a significant change to the way the New Zealand Transport Agency funds transport. The way I explain it is, at the moment, basically, it's called pay as you go. The NZTA takes the money in from fuel tax and road user charges, and then they pay it out. Now, that's not the way most businesses work, and it's not the way most households work. It's like, I describe it as like a household buying a house without a mortgage and with just 3 years of cash income, for example. So what we're doing is allowing the Transport Agency to borrow on its own balance sheet. They've got an asset base of about $26 billion a year in state highways, and they have revenue of $4 billion a year in fuel tax. And so we're going to allow them to borrow and pay back the debt basically over 20 or 30 years. It's like a household taking out a mortgage to buy a house, for example. That's how most ordinary businesses and households work, and so it's quite a significant change, and that provides quite a significant chunk of funding for the program we've announced today.
Don't we already have too many mortgages? How's this? What's the limit on this borrowing going to be?
Well, that will be investigated, but what we've said in the short term for the first 10 years will allow the Transport Agency to borrow $1 billion a year, so that provides for $10 billion. The advice I've received is that the Transport Agency could very easily borrow up to $25 billion in the next 5 years. We've decided the prudent thing to do is to space it out over 10 years for $10 billion. We're also using some of the government's COVID Response Recovery Fund. We're also reprioritising some money from the National Land Transport Fund. We're using future capital allowances from the government and some unallocated cash from the government's own New Zealand Upgrade Program as well. So people will be able to see online and publicly. It's a very credible costed package of projects, and one we think will really move the dial on congestion in Auckland and the Upper North Island.
So the reprioritising, are those projects being cut, and what's on the chopping block for that?
No, basically what we've done is we've taken the money that the current government has allocated to projects like light rail, which we don't support, and we're putting it back into the state highway activity class inside the National Land Transport Fund. This government cut $5 billion out of state highways when they came to office. We're restoring that funding, and in case anyone thinks we're not investing in public transport, we absolutely are. We're just doing it through direct Crown funding. We're investing in rail to Auckland Airport, for example, busways to the northwest of Auckland, out to the east, and down Dominion Road. So there's a massive investment in public transport. We're just not doing it through the National Land Transport Fund.
One of the projects which you seem pretty lukewarm on is the Sky Path. Are you saying that's off now?
Well, just saying we're pretty sceptical about it. A lot of the feedback I've had from Aucklanders is that the cost of it is just really extraordinary. A project that was, frankly pretty cheap to start, has really blown out to sort of $360 million. So people are pretty sceptical about whether or not it's worth the cost. So we're not saying we're absolutely committed to scrapping it. What we're keen to do is sit down with the experts, redesign it, and try and get a cheaper option. Look, I think in time there does need to be a walking and cycling link over the harbour. That will be a real asset for Auckland, but $360 million, the feedback I've had from Aucklanders is that is a pretty hefty price tag.
See, I'm looking at feedback which is 78% of people in favour it, and $360 million of a $31 billion doesn't seem so much. So what does a cheaper option look like, and when is that actually going to happen?
Well, we'll have a look at it. I mean, one option is that as we do our second harbour crossing, which will be a tunnel, both road and rail, so we'll finally get rail to North Shore, for example. One option is that as that's developed, you can retrofit the existing harbour bridge to potentially put walking and cycling across it, because of course you're basically adding hugely more capacity over to the shore with a tunnel, and you could potentially retrofit some of the existing harbour bridge. But that will come in time. So we're just going to work all that stuff through and talk to some of the experts about a cheaper option in the short term for the Sky Path.
So that tunnel, that is a massive project, as are the tunnels through the Brindleton and the Kaimai ranges. So, but you're saying there won't be an RMA process for that. How do you do that? How do you get that balance right with the environment, people's homes, mana whenua? How do you do all that safely without the RMA?
Well, we're not saying there won't be a environmental process to assess those tunnels. Obviously there will be. You can't just ride roughshod it and do them. What we're saying is that the current RMA process is broken in terms of the amount of time it takes, the consultation required, and the length of time it takes to get projects going. So, of course, you need to consider things like what you just mentioned, mana whenua, and the impact on the environment. No one's disputing that. The question is just the process, and the current Resource Management Act is broken. What we're saying is actually very similar to what the current government's done with the 12 projects that they've listed in its recent fast-track bill, which is really an indictment on the current resource management process, and it indicates that they think the Act is broken. We think so too. And those tunnels are some way off. We're not saying they're going to happen straight away, of course. We've said for the second harbour crossing 2028, but the Brindleton's and the Kaimais, that's into the 2030s. And as I say, we've scoped out a pipeline of projects over the next 20 years, and so there's plenty of time between now and 2031, 2032 to work through all the logistics and the implications of those projects.
Hey, Chris, we're running out of time, but today's speech was given by Judith Collins, but it was intended to be Todd Muller. Can I ask who you voted for earlier this week in terms of the leadership?
Oh, no, we don't reveal what happened in caucus.
Some people have. Are you comfortable revealing who you would have preferred to give that speech today?
No, look, I'm very comfortable with Judith as the leader of the National Party. There's a real enthusiasm, and just around the country, I'm just getting people so excited about her as leader, and I'm incredibly humbled and honoured to serve under her.
Your own electorate, Chris, was notably absent from all of these big transport announcements today. What's coming for Wellington?
Well, today was about the Upper North and Auckland, but I can reassure all of the people in Hutt South who are depending on me to deliver a great transport package for Wellington that good news is on the way.
What time? When are we expecting that?
Next 2 to 3 weeks.
Fabulous. Thank you very much for your time. That was Chris Bishop, National's Transport and Infrastructure Spokesperson.